We are live.
Okay. Good evening, Bazalwana. Today is Tuesday. We are going to talk about Center for Black Dots and African Studies. That's today's topic. Before we engage with this topic and introduce our today's speaker, let's start with a prayer and then we proceed. Let's pray. Thixo onamandla wonke, siyabulela Jesu Kristu ukuthi usivusile nangalesi samanje. Akukona ke Jesu Kristu because wethu nokuqonda ukuthi silibone usuku namhlanje. Akuthi ke monke Jesu Kristu, the engagement that we're going to have today may it be productive and fruitful to all of us. And let us learn more in Jesu Kristu okuhle kodwa siphinde futhi ngabe khona ukushayisana kwemqondo but sifunde kabanzi ngezinto zasemhlabeni. Sibiza ke wena simathe sezulu ukuthi hlala nathi uphinde usilondoloze njalo njalo, usikhaliphise monke Jesu Kristu, uphinde usichushise monke Jesu Kristu emhlabeni. Akuthi phinde masizolala ke monke Jesu Kristu lale nathi ke msindisi nalesikhathi samanje, usilondoloze ngabanye manje nasemaphakadeni. Amen. Okay, guys, today we're going to discuss more about the Center of Black Dots and African Studies. Speaker sanamhlanje is Brother Siyabulela Tonono, who is the coordinator of the Center of Black Dots at the Mokitimi Seminary. That's where he's located. We are going to engage with him and unpack this theme. We must understand, guys, in currently now we are in a way in academics having this thought of decolonizing. I can say we're in an era of decolonizing education, decolonizing literature, but we are in the era of decolonizing, and we focusly now understanding the African, basically African, because if you see, most of literature is basically in the Western knowledge, but it's not in the African context. Brother Tonono is going to channel us and walk through us in this journey on understanding the African studies as one of the neglected studies, if I'm a researchers or I'm a academics, I can say so. Over to you, Brother Siyabulela.
Good afternoon, good evening, Spamandla. Let me take this time and also to greet everyone watching us from wherever they're watching us. Thank you very much for the platform, for allowing me to be part of this platform. As stated in the bio, I am Siyabulela Tonono, currently working as a coordinator for the Center for Black Thought and African Studies. Now, our conversation today is really been about showcasing the work. It's going to be about showcasing the work and telling more about the story of the Center for Black Thought and African Studies, who or what the center is, what we do, and the kind of work that we do, and how we can get involved within that work, not only from a Methodist perspective, but across the board. So briefly, the Center for Black Thought and African Studies is a research center that is located at the Mokitimi Methodist Seminary. So we're a research institute, we're a research center which exists, it mainly exists as a space committed to research, the study and interpretation of Black thought and African studies. Ours is that through using research methods that are grounded in the experience and lived realities of African people, we kind of seek to influence and inform contemporary public discourses, as well as just issues that face the African continent in general. Essentially, the center is an academic spiritual research center, which is aimed at which seeks to promote Black thought and African studies. As you had mentioned earlier there, that part of African history and theories and thinking about studies about Africa have mainly have been from a very Eurocentric perspective. And so the center is really grounded in that. So we are a research center, as I've stated, and we're founded primarily on Black consciousness values. The values of Black consciousness, which recognize the historical, the racist, and the patriarchal and global forces of oppression that Black people all over the world are subjected to. And so we're guided by the principles of promoting agency of Black people in addressing the economic, socioeconomic and political challenges that we face within our communities, but also while recognizing that modes of being Black, that is to say, the way in which we understand ourselves as Black people, are the most vital resource in the liberation of Black people from forces of racism, patriarchy, and oppression. So a brief history on the Center for Black Thought. It is an initiative that was that was the idea of, or the brainchild of, the Black Methodist consultation. The Black Methodist consultation saw it fit that they have a research center that is directed at all issues relating to Africana studies, or what we call Africana studies. So looking at promoting ideologies of Black consciousness, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist thought, engaging with what decolonial thought is, and really grappling with that kind of conversations about Black theology. So it is a center to reflect on all things Black. And it is a center that is located, as I've said, at the Seth Moketimi Methodist Seminary. So it is through the work of the BMC in collaboration with the center. The center was launched earlier this year. I think it was on the 19th of February, 2020. So the center has been in existence for no longer than, has been in existence for just under a year, actually. Yeah, for a few months. And so part of what we have been doing in these past couple of months is just to ensure that the center is somewhat grounded within the operations, not only the operations, but the life of the broader SMMS community. So essentially, our work currently has been about establishing structures. It is a bit about thinking through the kind of research that we are doing, and the kind of research that we recognize as being a challenge. So essentially, our mandate can really be summed up in 4 parts. One, it is about celebrating the contribution and heritage of Black people, and the contribution of African people in humanity from antiquity up until now. Because part of the conversation, whenever we talk about Africa, we do not talk about Africa and its genuine contributions to the world. So part of our mandate is to celebrate the heritage of African people. Also, it is about initiating research within research priorities of the center. It is also disseminating knowledge and creating platforms for public awareness, because it's all good and well to research and publish all sorts of research, but at the end of the day, such knowledge production must go back into communities, churches, societies, and it must find a voice and a thought pattern within that space. So that is mainly part of our mandate. Now we've prioritized a number of research streams. The area, when we're talking about Black thought and African studies, we're really talking about a very broad area of knowledge, and so one has to kind of scale down the kind of research priorities that the center is looking at, and so ours, we really have prioritized mainly 4 research streams. The first one being that of Black agents in Christian development. And that stream of research looks seeks to kind of ask the question of what has been the contribution of Black people within the development of Christianity on the African continent. The general conversation and the general kind of academic studies and discourses kind of locate Christianity as an un-African thing. But however, if we reflect on the book of Acts, for example, if we think of Simon of Cyrene, he was an African. There's quite a lot of reference to the African continent within Christian texts. Another example is the Ethiopian eunuch who got baptized, and I think in the book of Acts. And so there has been a body of Christianity within Africa that has existed for as long as Christianity has existed. And so part of the research is to trace the contributions of Black people in that. For example, if you take the Ethiopian city of Lalibela, and now Lalibela is an age-old church, which is basically a big rock that has been carved into a church, and that congregation or that church has been in existence for hundreds and hundreds of years. It stretches back to about the birth of Christianity, basically. So towards the birth of Christianity. So if we think about it, there has been a lot that has been done within the African continent in the development of Christianity. However, much of the sort of the hegemonic scholarship doesn't recognize that. And also, let's also bring it a bit closer to home. Granted, Methodism was brought here through the barrel of a gun, through British soldiers, but ultimately it has been the agency of Black people and Black missionaries who have ensured that they through their efforts, they have planted churches across this entire connection, across the 6 countries of Southern Africa. And much of those stories are unknown. And so part of this research is to unearth those stories and to bring them to the fore and popularize them, such that when we think about Samuel Broadbent's, we must always think of David Magata. When we think of William Shaw, we must always be thinking about Gianni Chachu and William Kama and the like. When we think of Barnabas Shaw, we must always locate Barnabas Shaw's work within the agency and the work that was done by the likes of Jacob Links, for example. So that stream of research is one that seeks to center the stories of Black people within the development of Methodism in the South African context. The second stream of research, which we call the Reconsidering Reconciliation and Justice. Now, a bit of a background. One of the things that the center has been given, has been bequeathed with, is the content of the late Reverend Dr. Mgojo's study. So his entire library was bequeathed to the Center for Black Thought and African Studies. And so we received a whole series of boxes and books, which we are still in the process of archiving and making sense of the content of that study, of that. So that the books, the study or the donation came in the form of books that the late Reverend Gojo owned, but also a number of documents throughout his professional career. So one of Dr. Mgojo's greatest contributions to South African society was his involvement within ecumenical movements, but most recently, the one that is most notable is his involvement in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a deputy commissioner. So effectively, the archive that we have, we are working through, that was bequeathed by Reverend Mgojo to the center, effectively means that it gives us quite a significant material about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and about the inner workings of the TRC. So the research stream of reconsidering reconciliation and justice pretty much is that stream looks to interrogate the processes of the TRC, its recommendations, its outcomes in the quest for social transformation in South Africa, and it essentially seeks to ask new questions to the old issues of the TRC. Particularly, it's a very thorny subject within South Africa. There's a growing body of voices and opinion that is of the view that the TRC was flawed because it created an opportunity for people who did not apologize to get exonerated for their sins, as it were. So that stream of research looks to interrogate the archive, the Mkojo archive, but also over and above that, to engage with that archive, to be asking new questions, and to put the issues of the TRC back on the table and say, there are issues of reparations that are still left unquestioned. There are issues of economic, there are issues of economic not economic sanctions, but economic punishment for organizations and companies that interacted with the apartheid government. And so there's a whole body of work that needs South African society to reconsider their understanding of the TRC. And so that research stream is partly located in that. Our third research stream focuses on creating Black economic alternatives. And this idea, this is premised on the idea that capitalism in its current form does not work for Black people. It does not work for Black people. So the idea about this research stream is to be thinking about economic models that may center Black people. Because we've realized there's a whole body of evidence that capitalism is not working for everyone. Excuse me. So that is part of our third research stream, and our last research stream is that of decolonial alternatives, and this stream is kind of premised on the idea that knowledge production is intertwined with colonial, patriarchal, and capitalist systems of global domination. And so decoloniality seeks to discover modes of knowledge and being that exist outside of the global systems of domination with their inherent sort of racism, sexism, and poverty. So that is essentially our main research streams. We do have a number of 3 programs that we are currently running. One of them, which I think I will talk to later on. The first one is that of a Black Thought and African Studies library. So we're dedicated to the collection of books from all fields of knowledge pertaining to Africa, and that express the multiplicities of ways of being within the African context. And so what we are trying to do is to build a library, and is to build a library of such kinds of literature that we can rely on, which focuses on African literature, philosophy, music, Black theology, ancient African civilizations, poetry, but anything, basically we welcome any books, but just as long as their central focus is on the lived experiences of Black people, and it is written by Black authors. So our idea with the Black Thought and African Studies Library is that we must be creating a body of knowledge and creating avenues of access within a body of knowledge, for a body of knowledge that is unapologetically Black in its outlook, in its theorizing, and in how it engages with the world. So that is our first program. The other one, as I've mentioned before, is the Kozamkojo archive. Like I had said, we had received this massive donation. And so what we haven't done, when we received these boxes, it was about quite a lot of boxes of books and papers and files and documents and all those things. And so part of the process has been to codify, to sort of take stock of what do we have in terms of not only books, and then the books were then located within the Seth Moketimi Methodist Library, the Ronald and Nelson Mandela Sobukwe Library at our campus. So that's where the books are housed. It's very personalized books, in the sense that you read a book, and most of these are books that were part of a personal library. So you find some books have markings, some books were gifts from friends. So it's quite a very sentimental kind of, these are quite sentimental books just to engage with, just from that perspective of it being a bequeath of someone who we recommend, we recognize as one of our greatest Methodist icons, or at least in the 20th century, one of our greats. So part of that archiving process has been to look at through all these papers, make sense of them, and then catalog them. Because in any sort of process like that, I mean, when you receive a massive series of documents, you have to look through those things and make sense of what that content is, make sense of where. So when you come across a piece of paper, you must make sure that that piece of paper does not belong perhaps to a greater piece of text. And if it does, you must then find that where it belongs within this greater document. So we've been engaged in that process of going through that archive painstakingly, all those and ultimately kind of trying to catalog all our content, or all the content of that archive. So technically, in a strict sense, one cannot speak of it as an archive, but it is an archive, that it is a body of work that we are looking to preserve. So in that context, we may look at it as an archive, even though it is still in a very incomplete process. Again, in that regard, we would welcome any donations of stationery files, stationery, not only stationery, but archive boxes, and stand and racks and stands where we can put this, and so we can neatly put all and organize all of this information and put it at an arm's reach. And also we're looking at digitizing that. So eventually at some stage, we will be looking at digitizing that archive so that it is already available online as well for researchers to engage with. The whole point of this kind of an exercise is that there must be the researchers that engage with this archive, not only researchers, but people who have an interest in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or even about the history of Mkojo and his ministry. So the idea of keeping this kind of material is that it must be engaged with, and there must be knowledge outcomes that come from such. So when we look at this archive from our contents, we should be able to look at it and reread what we know about the TRC. The last program that I want to talk about is one that perhaps some may be familiar with, which has been a public seminar series, which is a series of public lectures that reflect on a number of conceptual themes in African studies. So our first, on the 18th of August, we had one of our first for the year, we had our first public seminar, which was on womenism and African feminism, which was delivered by a lecturer from UNISA, Ms. Cindy Swakobe, from the Department of Missiology at UNISA. And again, we've had conversations about Biko for a post-colonial South Africa. And we were supposed to be reflecting on Black consciousness, on the Black consciousness movement, and the role of Tsietsi Mashinini. So these are some of the seminars that we have been doing. And one of the upcoming seminars is to reflect, which will be taking place on campus at the Seth Moketimi Methodist Seminary, but will also be streamed via our Facebook platform, is the public lecture on Khoza Mgojo, which will be delivered by the honor students of the Seth Moketimi Methodist Seminary. And so that that seminar aims to reflect about the life and contribution and the leadership of Mgojo within the discourses of South Africa, and particularly post-apartheid South Africa. So those are some of the programs that we've got that we're engaged in. Excuse me. So those are some of the conversations, those are some of the programs that we're engaged in. So in a broad nutshell, I think that is what summarizes who the center is. Essentially, we're a center that exists to producing African knowledge that not only fosters social transformation in the lives of Black people, but it entrenches a particular kind of consciousness. And so our vision is that of centering African being. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Sibulela. I have one question, and you have touched the issue, Uguti, as you are researching at Seth Moketimi, and this center is basically focusing on publishing the traces of African life experience. So my question is, are there any studies being conducted based on or focusing on African spiritualities and Methodism? Because you may find that most of our members, they have African spirituality and they come to Methodist church. When they are there in Methodist church, they feel discomfort because they find that we don't embrace African spiritualities. So are there any studies being conducted around that and link it with the Methodism as a theory? Thank you.
And so I assume by African spirituality, you are, I'm not quite sure what you refer to, but that's a very contestable idea. But I think the essence of the question that you're asking is to say, how reflective are we about the ways of being that African people express themselves, and be that in the acknowledgement of the fact that Africans exist in a worldview that says you exist not only because of the past, but also because of your future. So you as an individual exist with people that were born, that because of people that were born before you, but also you exist because of people yet to be born, kind of. So I think there has been much of that research has long been done. I mean, when you think about Gabriel Sitilwane's work, the Reverend Gabriel Sitilwane's work, which was published in the 1960s, Sitilwane's work was really focusing on the God of Black people, and the God among the Sotho-Tswana. That is the title of the book. And so there has been there's been a lot of research that has been produced over the years around issues of Africans, or what you will call African spiritualities, particularly locating it within the Methodist context. However, much of those studies remain in ivory towers. So when I mean they remain in ivory towers, they are only in journals and in journal articles. And these are not, such kind of research is not leading the conversation and engaging us in our conversation within the life of the church. So the task of the center is located particularly in that, into saying, how do we don't need to reinvent a wheel here. There's a body of knowledge that exists currently. And how do we then tap into that body of knowledge, reflect on it, and think through whether such kind of knowledge is relevant for our context, or how do we take it further. So essentially, part of the task of the work of the center is to promote the kinds of work that center African being, and to answering social questions. And so that is one of the questions that needs to be answered within the context of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa. And so we must engage with it head on.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions on social media, like on Facebook, so that we can take them? I don't see any question here. Let me check on Facebook and see what's going on, if we're live on Facebook. Okay, there are no questions yes, so I think we may close this session. Thank you very much.
Before we close,
before we close, do you want to add something?
Before we close, mine is that, again, such a kind of a center which seeks to focus on the lives of Black people, their contribution, not only within the church, but within broader society, is something that we should all be engaged in. It's something that we can all be engaged in. So there are a number of ways through which you can get involved within the center. One of them is through just signing up to our mailing list on our website, which is www.centerforblackthought.org. So that's www.centerforblackthought. So it's CENTREFORBLACKTHOUGHT.org. So you can sign up on our website for our newsletters, and that will keep you up to date about the things that are going on, the work that we're doing within the center. Also, secondly, you can also follow us on Twitter, which is Center for Black ZA. So it's at Center for Black ZA. That's again at CENTRE the digit 4, Black BLACK Thought ZA. So Center for Black ZA. That is our Twitter handle. You can also find us on Facebook and follow and like our page on Facebook, which is the Center for Black Thought and African Studies. This is just ways in which you can get involved within the work, just to keep yourselves up to date with the work of the center, and also that. So there are those avenues. Also, as part of our newsletter, our quarterly newsletter, which you will get when you sign up on our mailing list. Part of our newsletters includes book reviews. So we welcome book reviews from people who read a book they found interesting, but those books should really focus on Black existence. So any review of texts that focus on Black existence you are more than welcome to send us a book review, which we will publish on our newsletter. And so there's room to be involved in much of the work of the center, and also the center exists mainly through donations, and so we do not have much funding to begin with. So would also welcome contributions, whatever donations that would be made to the center through the St. Methodist Seminary. So there are a number of ways in which we can get down. So I would like to urge people to get in contact with us, follow our pages, follow our websites, and just we'll keep you posted on the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Tonono. I have a question about the newsletter monthly thing subscription. Is there a monthly subscription, by the way? If
No.
you just subscribe to this?
No. All we do, if you go to our website, all you just need to do is you type in your email address, and we'll give you a newsletter. There's no monthly subscription. There's nothing like that. It's just it's our way of keeping the public informed about the work that we do within the center. So if you consider yourself a friend of the center, and you like things, you like the ideas of Black consciousness and those kinds of ideas, then please do follow our work, and we'll then be able to engage further.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Tonono, for just giving us an interesting introductory on understanding the work of the center, as well as understanding the work you do here at the St. Mokitimi Research Center, because most of us are not aware of what is going on about African studies and what it's all about and what research topic one may engage with. Thank you so much. It was such a productive engagement. Thank you. I have no other way to express this. Sharp, sharp. Good night.